yeah, this is full on.
Hello, what's going on? I'm Ali Paterson. Welcome to this month's Fintech Fire Rounds. It's the show with hot questions and even hotter wings, and today we are joined by Richard Harris, a keyboard wizard, a computer science Caesar, and an all-round top bloke who I also have a bone to pick about setting me up at Money 2020 to speak at completely the wrong conference. First of all, thank you so much for joining us today, Richard. How are you doing? How have you found the last few months of lockdown 3 or whatever lockdown we're doing at the Mo?
Hey Ali, it's great to see you. It's been so different for me. The last 12 months, I think I've spent most of my life on the plane for the last 10 years, and all of a sudden, literally I'm coming up to the 12-month anniversary since I took my last flight, and ironically the last flight I took was with my family to Venice last year for a holiday, which in retrospect was not the right choice of holiday destination, but there you go.
Excellent. So, 'cause we usually spot you, and there was a period, I think around 2018, where we saw you over 3 different continents in about 3 weeks. In Money 2020s in Singapore and Cybosses in Australia and all over the shot.
Yeah, that was absolutely my life for a long time, and I think in the last couple of years, I mean, my average flying time, I think in 2019 or 2018 even, I was doing more than 700 hours of flying a year. So, you know, some cabin crew do less, so I used to do a lot. So it's been a total switch for me, and actually, I think it's actually coincided with, you know, a significant amount of growth in the business that we're in for me to take over as the head of the sales function at Feedzai, and you know, being at home all the time has given me a different perspective on the business. But in some ways, it's been business as usual. We've been busier than ever.
Brilliant. Well, let's get into that. Here is the format. We have got five questions. And in between each question, we're going to be having a nice chicken wing. My chicken wings, I don't know about yourself, but my chicken wings are nice and plain. But I gather you've decided to kind of up the ante and go for pre-spiced chicken wings.
Well, as you know me, Ali, I'm quite a competitive person, so I've raised the bar. You know, and it's one of our Feedzai values: raise the bar. So I am starting with hot and spicy wings from Marks & Spencer as the baseline for this challenge. Look, my kids are impressed that I'm going to eat the first one, which is the ghost pepper sauce, because they've watched enough YouTube videos of people eating ghost peppers and they think that's hilarious. So they think it's amazing that I'm starting with ghost pepper.
Let's get straight into it. The first question is, it's all about you. Who are you and what do you do? I mean, you've been in numerous bands, but when you were first getting into the industry, did you think that you would end up on stage speaking to thousands of people or cheering your boss on as he was, you know, breaking bread with Richard Branson or arranging a industry party with Rudimental? So what exactly is it that you do at Feedzai, and what is it that Feedzai does? And whilst we have this, we're going to be going for the old ghost pepper. I don't mind that one.
Here it is. I mean, this is not an elegant format, is it? We're not going to come out of this looking like, you know, connoisseurs, are we, Ali?
Oh yeah, look, this is what you... Actually, that hit me now. This is what, you know, it's practice for hanging out with the Queen.
So that one's got a little bit of heat to it. But it's also pleasantly fruity. I think the blueberry brings a nice edge. I think, look, to answer your question, did I think I'd be doing this? Absolutely not. I started my career as an engineer, so I was a computer science guy and I wrote code. I didn't expect to get into this world or ever get up on a stage and speak at a conference. I was quite comfortable behind a guitar or a bass or a keyboard, but talking to people on stage filled me with terror, frankly, when I started out. I think, you know, I got into the fraud world through some of the computer programming stuff I was doing, trying to stop fraudsters in my early career, and you know, I don't think anybody necessarily plans a career in payments and fintech. You just end up here because of a unique combination of things that happen to you in your career, and here I am. But I have to say, I absolutely love doing the stage and the circuit, and you know, I've really missed out this year.
It's amazing the weird and wonderful kind of people and interaction, because that's what I think is missing this year. It's those random interactions or things overheard that you just can't find from, you can spend a whole week Googling, you just won't come across those?
Yeah, you have to really work at it. Look, it helps at Feedzai because we're a massively distributed company anyway. We've got 11 offices around the world. We're in Asia, we're in LATAM, we're in multiple offices in the US, obviously all over Europe, and headquartered in Portugal. So we've always been a very good organisation at working together remotely because we've had to. So when we had to flip over last year and be 100% remote as a company, that was seamless. It was natural for us to do that. But I think working with customers, it was that's been a big change, especially for a lot of the larger financial institutions we work with around the world. We work with some of the world's top tier banks, so you can see a real mind shift have to go on in some of those organisations to make that work.
Absolutely, I saw an incredible image. PNC in America, which launched a new mobile banking offering, which was literally a bank branch on wheels going from door to door. Which again, it is fulfilling a certain need. I want to hear about PayPal though, because you obviously back in your days at PayPal, you actually used hot sources as kind of a test bed.
So this was my I guess one of my bosses, John Lunn, who's a very successful guy in the fintech space, and when I was in John's team, we used to have a test website for checking new PayPal innovations, and we used his website, which was a website called Chili Monkey. It still exists. I think you can still buy chili sauce from it because John was a real chili head. So there is a fintech chili connection right back in my past there. That it was a test website we used at PayPal to test out new PayPal innovations at times.
Let's talk a little bit about Feedzai as a whole, because you've got quite a distinguished brand. Like, you're very focused on, here we are, we're wearing, you're in the uniform now. You've always got the fantastic huge screens, but when it comes to actually things like AI, you seem to be punching well above your weight in terms of kind of the scale that you deploy.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that's happened now over the last 5 years since you've known us, that when I first joined Feedzai 5 years ago, we were like 50, 60 people. Now we're nearly 500 people. We've got 4 out of the 5 of the biggest banks in North America as our clients. We're processing, more than 9 billion transactions. 80% of the world's Fortune 500 companies use us in one way or the other to protect their transactions. We've got something like half the population of Canada are protected by us through some of the things that we do with the bank partners we work with there. And the same across India, hundreds of millions of customers there. So, we protect billions of transactions, as I've said, every day. So we've really scaled it, and AI has been a cornerstone of been allowing us to do that, because to handle that quantity of data and to do that as accurately and as professionally as we do, you couldn't do it without machine learning and AI. That's really been the catalyst that's allowed us to scale this business.
Can we talk about that figure? Because the kind of daily figures are quite hard with my mere human brain to understand. So, I did read in terms of the amount of transactions that you're processing a day. How is it best to kind of visualize that as something that's actually being if it was to be done by people?
Well, I guess you just couldn't, really. You just couldn't. The whole point of having machine learning and AI in this space is it allows you to do things at a speed and a level of accuracy that you just couldn't do. So if I go back 15 or 20 years to when I started out in the industry, you could profile a single customer on at a single card level, maybe over the last week, and understand the behavior at that level. That might be the pinnacle of what you could do then. Now you can, with the latest genome product that we just rolled out, you can look at the profile and network of literally hundreds of millions of customers in real time and understand how they're all interacting with other. And that just gives you a level of detail and accuracy across that scale of data that we see, the ability to do things that a human being just cannot do.
Let's go up to the next one.
Let's go up one. It's time for pain.
How are your wings themselves, though?
You know what, I think Marks & Spencer's hot and spicy as a bedrock just doesn't compete even with the blueberries. So I don't think we're on a different playing field at all there, Ali. I think it's pretty even.
Oh, that was your opportunity for some bragging rights. Right. You've described the fight against fraud as an arms race. Banks themselves tend to almost be quite fast followers in many ways. How can banks ever hope to fight this cybersecurity war when they still should be focused on doing banking, which is what they are? They're banks.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. So, like, fraud and financial crime and banking are always in this tension. So there will always be people who seek to profit and steal money from banks. So as the famous bank robber in the 1950s said, Slick Willie, that's where the money is, right? That was the quote. So it's always going to be happening. So whatever the banks do, the criminals and the money launderers are always going to try and find a way around it. So it's a case of constantly evolving and revising what you're doing. You're never going to solve this problem. You just have to keep investing in it. And as a bank, it's very difficult to do that with your own technology team. It's hard enough running a bank. So that's where we and companies in this space come in, because we solve that problem as a speciality, and you have to keep bringing innovation to the table. And we filed more than, I think it's 12 patents this year on innovative AI-related practices related to detecting AML and fraud in this space. And you have to keep innovating if you're going to stay ahead of what these guys are doing. This is organised crime on a massive scale. This is, even at national level it can be. So it's not a case of stopping a few people who are misusing their card to buy a little bit of extra stuff. These are massive criminal enterprises making huge amounts of money out of this.
Do you think that banks themselves are now starting to, I know I hark on about this a lot, but starting to play within an ecosystem? They're not building their own data centers anymore. They're not, to quote Ben Robinson, they're not hiding behind their high castle walls. Do you think they're much more focused on being part of that ecosystem?
Yeah, this is still really hot.
I know. I've just asked my lovely wife has brought me a Muller corner as well for future use.
I'm not resorting to the milk yet. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to hold out. So, we work with banks. So one of the best examples is Mox in Hong Kong, the Challenger Bank. I mean, their CEO has been on record saying we don't own a single server. So, and I think that's the future in the banking space. You're going to have banks who are companies who manage their customers' data, are a brand. Some will go more towards the front end, some will go more towards the back end from a technology and network perspective and have multiple brands on the front end. So banking is definitely changing from that perspective. It's shifting very, very fast. You see the number of challenges in this space now, like SoFi and N26 and all of the others. It's just a huge space now.
Absolutely. I've got to say, Mox is I kind of wish I want Hong Kong citizenship so I can get a bank account with those guys there, because it just seems like such a decent brand. And again, it's all built with that approach that they don't own anything. It's all just everyone together, an ecosystem.
Exactly. It's and I think that's definitely the future. It's definitely the future. Absolutely.
That one was a wee bit cheeky, to put it mildly.
Yeah, as you said, it didn't have a lot of flavour. It just had a lot of heat. So let's step forward. Yes. Okay, so I'm not being shy, Ali. There's a lot on there, so.
I gotta say, my favourite ever business book, I will maintain it is a business book, is World War Z. The book, not the film, because it's about taking a step back and how to deal in survival. It's deal with what you got. I still think that is the most important business book that I've read.
That's a fair point.
That is a bit cowardly, I have to say.
Oh, yeah, this is full on.
Machine learning has been the cornerstone for a lot of anti-fraud attempts, but it's still, machine learning and AI is still considered sci-fi-esque. How can we democratize machine learning? Because it seems to kind of be something for the realms of the big banks and organizations. How can it be democratized for, say, a small business-to-business lender? Let's have this.
I think that's a brilliant question. And that's definitely the way the market's going. It's the way we're going. So yes, 5 years ago, machine learning was really preserved at the tier one banks. They were the ones who were looking at this. They were the ones who were investing this. But now everybody wants it, but it's having the capability and the ability to manage it. And we call it operationalizing machine learning. And that's the hard thing. When you're a tier one bank and you've got 150 people in a data science team, you can do whatever you like. All you need is the ability to transfer that machine learning capability that you have and build into a live environment. And that, even for the tier one banks, is often a very difficult thing for them to do. And we built our reputation, our business on providing that pipeline and that ability to get what the banks were building and what we were helping them build into production very, very quickly. Because, as you said, fraud's an arms race. You've got to be able to respond quickly, and the speed of response is critical. But when you're a smaller bank, who may be a challenger bank or a community bank, or as you say, a B2B lender, a P2P payment provider, you haven't got a team of 100 data scientists. So to support those banks, what we've done is, we've built a system called Feedzai Solutions, which allows those customers to just plug in. We're fully cloud these days, but this just allows a community bank just to plug in to an API, be up and running. It's got out-of-the-box capabilities with machine learning ready to use straight away. We just went live with a big challenger bank in the US. We had them up and running in 6 weeks. I mean, it's that fast that you can get machine learning into production with a bank in 6 weeks, ready to go and protecting them on a live channel.
See, that's what I want to see. I want to see that. Sorry, that one was actually that was fine compared to 100% pain. That was.
It's hot, but it tastes nicer, so it's more bearable. It's actually got some flavour to it.
We did a little thing on this company. I genuinely find this company fascinating. It's a small business lender. And their business model is, credit check, jump through all the regulatory hoops, but then they like to sign face to face. And the reason they like to sign face to face is their managing director is, I reckon he's about the same kind of size as The Rock. He's absolutely huge. And that's obviously the approach. It's, make sure you pay this back. That's what I want to see. Those kind of, small 3 or so people that are running like a small lender, they should have access to these kind of technologies. And at the moment, the research and development costs have been huge. So of course they're not going to even bother with it.
Well, I mean, there's always going to be that machine learning is fundamentally about maths and statistics. So if you're going to do that, you need a certain level of data. But again, once you're doing this in a fully cloud-based approach like we are, then you've got all of that data there. So a small player coming in can benefit from the network effect of the intelligence and the data that you're seeing across the entire network. So suddenly it doesn't become the preserve of big banks who've got big data. Suddenly everyone can benefit from the big data because it's there. You're in the cloud and the data is there.
Do you think that approach has scaled up to some of the tier 1 banks? I mean, you hear wonderful stories of very large banks saying, yep, we're going to build our own data center. And then equally, you then hear about other ones that are going to be sending everything through AWS or Google or whoever it may be.
I mean, that's definitely what we're seeing now. I mean, the vast majority of companies we talk to are either in the cloud or they're saying, how do we do this in the cloud? So that's just the reality. And I think actually the last year has accelerated that trend. Everybody's realised that a virtual environment is the one that we're going to be using, certainly for the foreseeable. This has accelerated a lot of investment in that space, and banks are shifting to the cloud quicker now than they were 12 months ago. So I think it's really accelerated the trend.
Brilliant. Excellent. Let's go on to the bomb beyond insanity, which I have to admit I'm kind of nervous from because I have tried that one before.
Well, I mean, if you look at the bottle, I don't know if the camera can pick this up, but when you see a radiation sign on the bottle itself, that's that's making me slightly concerned, I have to say.
Consume 1 drop at a time with extreme caution. Good gravy.
Yeah, I've never been one for reading the instructions, as many people who know me will tell you. So here we go.
You obviously work for Feedzai, a company you got some incredible stats. 95% of all French issued cards are powered by you. What fraud facts still surprise you today, and how do you think you kind of ended up in the Feedzai as a whole has ended up in this position fighting kind of at the forefront of fighting fraud? So what are some of the stats that still surprise you today? You're right.
Oh, that's really hot. That's really hot. Ali, that is really hot. That's getting to my vocal cords now. So I'll not have anyone say I didn't do this properly. I may regret this later though. So what still surprises me, I think on the one hand, am I surprised? It is. It's kind of.
I know it's coming. I bite it and I go, do you know what? That's fine. And now
it's the afterburn. You think you've got through it, and then it just keeps rising. It just keeps coming. So I guess, look, across our customer base, we certainly saw a rise in attacks in certain areas. We protect, some massive brands around the world, and we definitely saw increased attempts to attack them. But again, it depended on the product. So, certain types of product were more in demand with people working from home. Other things weren't. So it was a case of, manage that from a targeted perspective, and we did that well. I guess the public record shows that a lot of stimulus that went into the industry, direct payments to businesses to support for different stimulus programs around the world. I think we're already seeing publicly that there's concern there that not all of that was handed out in a way that was necessarily managed well. Obviously, it was done quickly, so it was hard to do. But I think in a lot of cases, what processes were followed. Was AI or machine learning even in the process to decide who got any of those payments and what went on. I suspect in a lot of cases it wasn't. So, if those things weren't managed well, a huge amount of money will have gone into the wrong hands, because those types of things were absolutely going to be attacked by the fraudsters. They were ready to look for that kind of opportunity.
Bit of a weird question on that, and just to kind of tie that kind of loosely in with the coronavirus, do you think that there's kind of the equivalent of like an R number with fraud? I.e., if people realise, actually, I can get away with this here, it then kind of builds up exponentially, or do you, or as soon as you kind of close a certain amount of doors, the amount going on, the amount of attempts, the amount of reward, so to speak, is shrinking?
Look, I think it's slightly different to that. I don't think it's like an R number, but I think that it's been the case for a long time that there are kits on the internet that you can use to go and attack even individual businesses on a named basis. So, what used to be the preserve of a hacker group who'd have to know how to do this is now there are companies who, and businesses on the dark web, they're not real companies, but they actually monetize the ability to go and make those attacks. So, it's in the gold rush sell shovels, right? So you've got middlemen in the criminal underworld actually making attack kits to go and steal money, and they're selling those for money. So, and the data obviously is a commodity in that space as well. So that's become, that kind of whole process has become productized, and it's made it easier for more people to do it. So I think that is driving the industry on some levels.
Let's go on to the final one, which is Blair's Megadeth with Liquid Rage. Well, want to get into kind of crystal ball time for this?
And the crystal ball I have right now is this is probably going to hurt, Ali. I think, and there's probably no probably about it. This is going to hurt, right? Now, I'm going to regret this, but that is a lot of sauce on here. So,
account openings for banks take minutes. I have to admit, it's not even just the account opening; it's the way everything can link with open banking. Shout out to Stake in Australia, because I was trading within about 30 seconds of opening an account. What does this mean for fraud and KYC or onboarding, and will it be possible to make onboarding any quicker without it becoming a bit more, right? Without fraud having an impact on there?
So I think this is painful, this one. So
I can't for that.
Oh. Wow, this is really hard. This is. I can feel it, when you start to feel your eyelids sweat when that's where we are on this one. That's kind of pretty brutal.
Oh no, I'm pulling my mouth back. It's on the top of my
No, you can't get rid of this. It's going to be there for 20 minutes or something. You just know how hot this is. So account opening. Look, it comes down to, actually, I think one of the interesting things here is going to be the consumer experience there is a balance here. Because if you just apply and then you immediately have account in 1 second, how safe are you going to feel as a consumer? You need to feel that you've gone through some kind of process to feel that the bank is, actually interested in you and is going to give you something. So I think while we want things to be ever faster and more convenient, I think we also value as consumers in the financial services space some level of thoroughness. And you feel more confident if you've gone through a process that is, thorough. So I want it to be thorough. I want it to feel like this is a real thing and this is solid and it's run properly, but I want it to be as easy as possible. So it's not necessarily the speed of the process, has it got to happen in 30 seconds? But it's, you want the process to be easy. I don't want to be asked for data that I don't know how to find. If you're going to make me go and find, 5 pieces of information in a filing cabinet somewhere in my house, I'm not going to do it right now. So it's, how do you make that process happen, but make it happen with the information that I have? So, and I think this is where we're going with, with identity and biometrics and those things. It's, it's a bit of what you know, a bit of who you are, and a bit of what you have, and that kind of stuff. So it's, if you can bring all of that to the table in an onboarding process and make it convenient. Convenience isn't just about the speed; it's about how can I do it, easily with what I have to hand, rather than having to go and source a utility bill from 6 months ago. I mean, how many of us know exactly where the utility bill for the water is in our house? Are you going to be able to find that within 30 seconds? Probably not. So if that's what I've got to provide to open an account, that's going to slow things down. Whereas if you ask me for 5 bits of information about what I've done recently in financial services, because you've got a way to cross-reference and check that to validate me, that's going to be a better experience, and it's going to get done now. And also, I can feel it internally now. Is the heat is building. It's not just here. It's everywhere.
Is there a danger there's going to be a lot of piggybacking? You've got an account with Lloyds, so you must be safe.
Look, I think in the future, if we get this right as an industry, then we are going to move to some kind of more federated type of identity, where I go to a certain level of thoroughness to get a certain level of product at a certain place, and then they can vouch for me in other places. You're already seeing the social media companies do this around the place. It's how many times are you asked to log in with Google or log in with Facebook? But I think, there's another step to this. Who do we all trust more than those companies? Well, we probably trust our bank more than them. So, are the banks going to become, identity brokers at some point, or is it going to work in another way? Is it going to be blockchain based or what have you? But I think all of those things are going to drive us to a future where this is, banks have got the opportunity to take on an awful lot more of services for their customers, in terms of that relationship you have with your bank is a very close and personal one, and they can broker that identity relationship if they want to. And it shouldn't be about them providing personal data or any of those things, but it's, can they validate that you are who you are, conveniently and securely? Well, yes, we're already proving that with strong customer authentication, PSD2, and all of those things with the customer bases that we work with around the world. And providing machine learning and AI as part of that profiling process to really understand it. Is this really the consumer in front of me, or is it someone pretending to be there, or someone trying to piggyback off that? That's that's already happening right now.
So with that pain kind of going around, which is the most insecure bank that you've ever seen?
I don't know if it's about an insecure bank. I think it's, and I wouldn't want to name names because that would be unfair, but I think
what's the process that you've kind of taken a step back and thought, sorry, this is happening right now, that you had to kind of fix straight away?
Look, I with a big bank that I banked with a long time ago, probably 10 years ago, I got a call from the fraud department saying that I owed money on a credit card, and they wanted me to pass security. So I was like, okay, well, I don't have a credit card with you, so I'll have a go at passing security, because I can give you my date of birth, my name, address, and everything else. And I validated that it really was the bank calling, it generally was their fraud department. So I said, look, I'll have a go, but I haven't taken out a credit card with you, so it's probably fraudulent, so I probably can't validate because I didn't set the account up. They said, well, look, we can't validate it with that unless you validate for the account. So I gave them, the information I could to try and validate myself, and they said, that's not good enough, we can't validate you, so you have to pay this bill. And I said, well, that doesn't work because I didn't set the account up, so I can't validate. So we were in this kind of weird catch-22. So the only way I was able to solve it was, I happened to know the head of fraud operations at this bank because of being in the industry. And I called her up and said, look, we haven't spoken in like a year, but you know me from the industry. I've just got this call from your team. And here's the situation. They want me to validate, to sort out the problem on the account where I owe them money. I haven't opened the account, so it's clearly a fraud. And without her intervention, I don't know how I would have solved that. So if I've been a genuine member of the public who didn't know the head of fraud at this bank, how would I have solved that problem? Now, it turned out, yes, someone had stolen my identity. I'd moved house. I hadn't had an account with this bank in 10 years, but they sent me a letter to my house giving me a free credit card to get me back on board. So someone who was renting the house that, I no longer lived in, it was a student house, had just signed the card on their behalf and gone around spending it. And of course, the bill had traced back to me. So, it was one of those things where it was just it was a marketing campaign. And this is often what we see, is those kind of things where the disconnects within an organisation of any type, where marketing go, hey, we need to get more customers, let's do this. No one's spoken to the fraud team in the bank about what they're going to do. And then, of course, it doesn't connect, it comes back to bite them. And I think that's the biggest disconnect I see sometimes in the industry, is where fraud and risk teams tend to be really, really good at what they do. The big risks tend to come when initiative happens within the bank and the fraud and risk team weren't involved at the beginning to say, hey, you know what's going to happen if you do that. And I think for me, it's not about those banks having a poor team. It's about when there's no communication in the bank about how this is going to work, that's where you can really see things go badly wrong, just like that example.
Brilliant. That's a really good example to kind of it is about bringing the fraud teams on from the absolute get-go. I like that, and hopefully they'll be brought in and be saying, yep, you're fine to do this, but maybe do this part of it first as well. Maybe we're going to run a check on addresses in your instance.
Look, I mean, very few people go into financial crime and fraud on the, on the side of the good guys, working within a bank or financial institution to make money. I mean, there are easier ways to make money in the world. They tend to be very passionate people driven by, fairness and transparency and accountability and in ethics fundamentally at that level, and that's what they're there for. So usually that team will do a great job if they're involved. But yeah, if tip for any financial institution, if you're going to do that kind of stuff, launch new projects, attack new customer bases, go into a new region, any of those things, getting your risk team involved at the beginning is usually the best way forward, because it will save you a huge amount of pain later on.
Excellent. Well, Richard, thank you so much for taking the time and for enjoying some nice spicy hot wings with me today. Where is the best to find out more about yourself? Because we can't just grab you as you come off stage for the next few months.
Well, if anybody wants to contact me directly, then feel free to email me. Richard Harris at Feedzai.com. But more importantly, go to the Feedzai website, feedzai.com. Everything that we do is there. So, there's a complete, breakdown of who we are, what we do, and how we can help if you're interested in that kind of stuff.
Thank you very much, Richard Harris, everyone.
Man, this is brutal.